Hello, I'm Jackie Lucky, your financial planning maestro. This series of podcasts is aimed at financial planning professionals and also those who are looking to enter the financial planning profession. We will be talking during the podcast about all things Certified Financial Planner certification related, talking to other CFPs around the world, and also we will be dropping in on some new entrants who've just entered the financial planning profession, and we'll be checking up along the way on a regular basis with them to see how they're getting on. I hope you enjoy today's podcast. Hello and welcome. I'm Jackie Lucky, your financial planning maestro. And in today's podcast, we are talking all things relating to the CISI Level 7 case study assessment, which is the final step in the UK to become a certified financial planner. And I am joined by a very special guest who has just been successful and become a CFP professional. And that is Kelly Selby, who is a paraplanner with Amber Wealth Creation. Welcome, Kelly.
Hi.
Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we have got lots to talk about your journey along the way to become a CFP professional. But before we do all of that, I'm going to start at the very beginning and ask you if you could just give me a quick potted history of how you got into the financial planning profession.
So the short answer is purely by accident. So I'd just left university and I was working full-time at Blackwell's bookshop in Oxford as the head of the business and economics department, and I was looking for a proper, a full-time job in a profession. I was probably looking for something in a crematorium type space, if I'm honest, in the Midlands, so I could be closer to my, at the time, brand new boyfriend. And I got a call from a recruiter saying, I noticed, you've worked for this bookshop in the business and economics department. There's a job going quite local to you, which is as a report writer for a wealth management company. I'd never heard of what wealth management was at the time. But I thought, well, it's good practice, isn't it, to go for an interview? So I got sent the information, got told the interview was in about 2 days' time. Oh, and by the way, could I write an essay for this interview?
Yikes.
I know, so 500-word essay in 2 days. The essay questions to choose from were about the deficit and how successful George Osborne was at the time as Chancellor in reducing the deficit, or about the horse meat scandal that was going on at the time. And I thought, well, nobody's going to want to hear about horse meat from a vegetarian, so I better write about the deficit. I went to the interview, had a really good chat with the owner of the company at the interview. He was pleased because I was the only person apparently who actually wrote about the deficit.
Oh, wow.
And I was offered the job. So that's kind of how I got into it. And from there, I've, done my exams and developed the career, and here I am.
Wow, what a baptism of fire, Kelly. Blimey. Yes. I'm not sure I'd have got past an interview doing that. Well done, blimey. Cool. So how did you find out about the CFP and why did you decide to embark on that process?
So I found out about the CFP probably about 5 or 6 years ago when I joined my previous company. My manager at the time, Ed, was a CFP professional, and he was very, very keen for me to start doing it. And I managed for about 5 years to put it off, and then I just ran out of excuses. Then I thought, well, let's just go for it.
Fantastic. And did you have to sit at that time? Did you sit the level 6 exam or did you do the bridge assessment?
I sat the level 6 exam. So before joining, I'd achieved the RO 1 to 6 and the AF3 exams with the CII. But then I did the level 6 with the CISI.
How did you find the preparation for all of that?
For the level 6, actually, it wasn't too bad. What I my overwhelming memory of doing the level 6 was sitting down with as many past papers and questions as I could get my hands on, and repeatedly going over and over and over all of the calculations until I knew them like the back of my hand. And just, writing those essays. It was that you always get that little essay question in the middle that you have to do for something like 20 marks. Just, spending hours writing those essay questions. So in many ways, my initial foray into the industry was quite good practice for that.
Yes. So it gave you the skills to, think on your feet and be succinct at the same time.
Exactly that. Yes.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well done. And so then you obviously you passed that. So congratulations on passing that. And
Thank you.
What happened after that? Did you decide to go straight on to the level 7 case study, that final step, or did you have a bit of a pause there?
No, the plan was for me and one of my colleagues at the time who did the bridge, kind of the bridging qualification.
Yep.
We were going to sit the level 7, go through the coursework at the same time so we could bounce ideas off each other. And the only thing kind of getting in the way was waiting for me to pass level 6. So as soon as I got that, we both entered level 7 the same day.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so what was your initial approach when you got your case study? Are you the kind of person that has to kind of do a deep dive, for 2 or 3 hours at a time? Or are you the kind of person that can kind of pick it up and put it down over a regular period of time?
I am definitely a deep dive person. I'm a paraplanner, so I find I'm really good at picking something up. I have to give it a good read through, and then I can sit down and concentrate and really get on with it for 2, 3, 4 hours at a time. But I know that as soon as I put it down, sleep on it, I've forgotten half of what I've done the day before. So it takes me another half an hour to go back, remind myself of where I'm up to. So I'm definitely a deep dive kind of a person. I can't pick things up and put it back down.
Yes, I know that feeling. I'm exactly the same.
Yes.
So is that the approach that you took with the case study? Did you kind of, dive straight in and use, blocks of time to work your way through the case study?
It is. So the first thing I did was have a read through the case study, a read through every bit of information that the CISI sent with the case study, read through everything. I immediately joined your course, which was the best decision that I ever made. And then I spent probably half an hour to an hour, sat down with a spreadsheet, creating myself a calendar for the next, 10 weeks of all of the things that I've already got booking in, time for work, and then assessing how much time I would have each, day and at the weekends to dedicate just to looking at this piece of coursework. So if there's ever any doubt that I'm a paraplanner, you can go back through and look at my extensive spreadsheet of planning calendars.
A spreadsheet for a spreadsheet. Excellent.
Yes.
Girl after my own heart. So you signed yourself up to a course, you got yourself all nice and organised, and were there particular sticking points as you were working your way through the case study that you found a bit more tricky or a bit more unusual, something that you don't perhaps normally do on a day-to-day basis?
I think I got quite lucky with my case study because it was a single client, so I didn't have a married couple.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that the case study were asking for were things that we deal with a lot on a day-to-day basis. Or they were things that if we don't deal with, they're actually quite straightforward to incorporate. So kind of the charity elements. So in that respect, I got very lucky. I think the big sticking point and the big thing that I found more intimidating than I anticipated was the spreadsheet, the cash flow spreadsheet. Because obviously, in day-to-day life, we use cash flow planning tools that they've already input all of the the technical pieces behind the scenes, and you never really see it at the back end. You just see what they've put out on the screen, put your numbers in, and then it all magically works. So for me, I think as much as I love a spreadsheet, actually sitting down and really thinking, how do I get this started was a bit daunting initially, but the course that we went through with you was phenomenal for that, because it just breaks it down step by step, right from, you know, the very first cell to the very end, and it made it something really quite approachable.
Good. That's great to hear, because they do turn into a bit of a monster, these spreadsheets, and you end up with quite a lot of them as well along the way, don't you?
I've lost count, and my poor husband, who is he's a software developer, did have to step in a few times and try and help me sort out some of the circular referencing.
Happens to us all, happens to me. I think I recorded a few of them that did it to me as well. And I kind of thought, I'm building this, I know what I'm doing, and it still did it to me.
Yes.
So I completely understand where you're coming from there. So, but, you know, I guess the thing is that do you think that, you know, those specifically, you know, those tough areas, did you think at the time, you know, apart from obviously pulling your hair out, but looking back now, do you think that, well, I wouldn't go far as to say enjoyable, but a worthwhile exercise to do to, like you said, looking at it through from the back end, if you like?
Absolutely. I think for me, the big thing that I've taken away from it, from having built the spreadsheet, I now feel that I have a really good in-depth knowledge of how a lot of the software works behind the scenes. But also, you know, if you've got a client that you don't necessarily want to go through doing a full cash flow and spending hours configuring it all, you know, I feel much more confident that actually I can build something that's much more specific to their needs and what we would need to be able to show them. It's definitely a worthwhile exercise, and not something that I expected that I'd ever be going through in quite such detail, but it gives you a completely different perspective on that side of the planning.
It does, absolutely, it does. And how did you find my favourite area of financial planning, assumptions? How did you get on with
assumptions.
Those? Is that a swear word?
It might be a swear word. I think initially I thought, this will be okay. I'm quite good at research. I've got a law degree, so I should be able to sit down and go through and understand this stuff. And I've already done, you know, I've been in the industry for nearly 10 years at the time when I started on my CFP journey. And the more I looked into it, the more I started to doubt my own thought process. Because you kind of go through the historic data and then you go, oh, am I going far enough back? But what about the years that are anomalies in the data? What do I do about those? And how do I account for this? And how do I know that my assumptions are correct? And how much do I take the current, you know, macroeconomic environment into account when making my future assumptions? In, you know, this fictitious world that is the CFP case study. Yes, I lost a few nights' sleep going through the assumptions, but I think I got there in the end.
They're the kind of thing, I think, that I don't know whether you find this, but I see quite a lot of people who kind of go, I'm not too worried about the reason behind why I'm picking the number. I just want to pick the number, Jackie, because I just have to get these spreadsheets finished. And actually, you kind of have to do it the other way around, don't you? You really have to think through why you're going to pick the number you're picking and what your sources of reference are, because then you find if you don't do that, you quite commonly come unstuck at the other end, because you end up with all this jumble of different numbers that essentially then when you strip out the effects of inflation out of them, they don't sit together, do they? They don't really sit neatly alongside each other like a set of assumptions should.
That's exactly right. I mean, it is a very kind of process-driven thematic thing that you go through, and you do really have to start off from the very beginning with no kind of concept of what you might end up with, and almost forget everything that, you've been doing day to day in your professional life, and actually sit down as if you were doing a research piece and say, well, what does the data tell me, instead of what do I want to see from the data?
Yes. Yes, rather than shoehorning the answer or
Yes.
after reading the case study, kind of going, oh, I know this person needs to top up their pension or whatever it might be. By setting those assumptions, the numbers are what the numbers are, aren't they? I mean, I think I've said that to you a few times, haven't I?
Exactly that. And, the case study does give you a certain number of assumptions to work with as well. And I think if you start to approach it from the point of view of, what number you want to have, actually, by the time you go through and start putting it in with the case study, it doesn't always make sense with the numbers that they've given you, because they've given you those numbers for a reason as well.
Yeah. Yes. I think one of the most common mistakes that I'm finding at the moment is expenditure inflation. And there's a bit of an uptick of people using online expenditure tools to be able to identify a personalised expenditure inflation rate. But what they haven't realised, it comes out with a number like 9% or something colossal. But what they haven't realised, if they look in the small print at the bottom of the screen, is that there is a high level of price inflation that's built into that, because it's a nominal return. And it's something like 6%. So actually, the real escalation rate is only 3%. And because obviously the case study, the numbers that the CISI has given you, I think it was 2%, wasn't it, for price inflation? So you can end up in a completely different place if you're not mindful of the effects of inflation, particularly on those new assumptions that you're going to make.
Yes, I mean, it can, depending on what your tools you're using and what you're looking at, the numbers can vary so wildly. So I think it's so important to really look and do your own research on these things, so you really understand where those numbers are coming from in the first place.
Yes. Fascinating stuff. So looking back now, do you have a feel for how long it took you to put the financial plan together to pass the assessment overall?
Overall, so I passed on my second submission. I think I probably spent maybe just over 200 hours in total across both submissions. I think I've worked it out somewhere sort of around the kind of 170 to 200 hour mark on the first submission. And I think at least 150 of those hours must have been spent on the spreadsheet. And then I probably spent another 20 hours on the second submission. So there wasn't too much to change. But as I mentioned earlier, I am that person that has to go back and read back through everything and remind myself exactly what I did, and then go through every single cell on the spreadsheet, because I've definitely got something circular referencing somewhere along the lines.
And I think the good thing about the way that you approached it is that you gave it your all right from the start, didn't you? So if you didn't pass on your first submission, you were going to be, a gnat's whisker away from passing. And therefore, did it lift the pressure by taking that approach? Did it lift the pressure on the second submission that you could actually spend, as much time essentially as you wanted to, because there weren't, major changes to make?
I would like to say yes, but I think I'm too much of a catastrophizer to say that. So I think I still felt quite a lot of pressure to put everything into it on the second submission, because I probably could have done it a lot quicker. But it was nice to be able to think that most of it was in place, and actually it's only a few sort of little tweaks here and there that I needed to make. And it gave me that space to be able to think, it's okay, I can sit down with my highlighter, go through the report that I've written with the examiner's feedback, and highlight every single bit that they've given feedback on. So I know exactly what I need to change, and I won't forget to change something. So, the report still makes sense on the second submission.
Yes. And how important was it to have, friends and family and have their support. I mean, obviously, having an IT expert as a husband sounds like a fantastic plan. But, generally, obviously it's difficult to do without that level of support, isn't it, from the people around you, both, professionally and personally?
It's essential. So for me, and we've spoken about this before, Jackie, but you're aware that when I started doing my CFP, my first submission, a few weeks into that, my company went through a transition into another company. So it was all sort of quite up in the air and quite disruptive in the first few weeks. So kind of having that support network that kept everything grounded, that, meant I'm not tearing my hair out about anything more than just the spreadsheet at any given moment, was brilliant. And then, having a husband that's quite proficient with a spreadsheet also helps significantly. Just having somebody handy that can say, or maybe if you, instead of changing that line, change the one above or below it, and then that will solve the circular referencing issues.
Excellent. Husband on tap. I'm going to get his number after the end of this interview.
Oh, definitely.
It's fantastic. And it's great to hear that, that you had the support around you in order to be successful. So congratulations again on becoming a certified financial planner. So we are nearly at the end of our podcast today, but I've just got a couple of other questions that I wanted to ask you. So now you've had a little chance to look back after passing. Do you think that it is going through the CFP process and passing the level 7 has changed either your thought process or your approach to the way that you write financial planning reports for clients moving forward?
I think it's changed my thought process the most, and it's given me a new perspective and understanding on certain areas. So, the importance of cash flow planning. I think if you're giving holistic financial planning advice, there's a tendency with some people that I've worked for or with in the past to think that young clients might not necessarily need cash flow planning, but actually having gone through this, being able to show somebody, it's probably not going to be correct because we're not fortune tellers really, but being able to give them an indication of which direction they're going in can be so valuable and just gives the client so much reassurance that they're on the right path regardless. And it also helps with future reviews. So you can kind of go back in a year or two's time and say, well, this is what we did before. This is what we thought it would look like in the next few years. And this is roughly where we are. And, you're able to then adjust the plan if you're not on track or if there are other changes that have come up in the meantime. So in that respect, I think it's been really helpful. And especially, from a paraplanning point of view, we're seen as the very technical side of the planning role. But we are also the report writers in a lot of instances. And so it's so important for us to be able to take the in-depth technical knowledge that we have and be able to translate it into something that clients can really understand. And, you don't have to have a diploma in financial planning to know what we're saying to the clients.
Yes. Go on.
So writing the coursework, and in particular writing it in terms of it being a client-facing document. That was another area I utilised my husband's skills in as a non-financial professional, was to just read through it and tell me, am I using too much jargon? Have I explained everything so that a layperson would be able to understand the planning and the recommendations and the reason why I'm putting that in the report?
And it's so important, isn't it, to have those skills as a paraplanner to essentially take that technical information, to work out the kind of what if scenarios, to apply that to the financial plan, and then to be able to articulate it in writing to a client in, something meaningful that reflects their objectives. So, you bang on that, paraplanners, it's not just, I certainly, as we were saying before, I used to be a paraplanner myself, and I used to think I need to go into any client meeting having swallowed a technical manual to have, the perfect answer at any moment in time. But actually, in reality, that's just a small part of the paraplanner role now, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And, I think most clients don't actually expect you to have all of the answers immediately to hand, because we have to have such a wide range of knowledge. It can be very easy to mislay that piece of technical information in your head in the moment. I've certainly been there where somebody's asked me a question on the spot and I've gone, I know this is something that I know, but I don't know where it is in my head at the moment. And then they go away and 10 minutes later I go, oh yeah, this is the answer.
Yes.
And I think most clients that, when I have spoken to clients, they're happy for, paraplanners, advisors to go away and say, I'll have a look. I'll make sure I'm giving you the right information. And I'll give you a call after the meeting, or I'll send it to you in writing so you've got something to refer to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, final question, Kelly, and I know our listeners are waiting with bated breath for the answer for this one because they all know what's coming. But what advice would you give to those who are starting their journey to become a CFP professional today?
So I've got my 3 big tips. First of all, and I think this is the most important one, book a course and then follow it to the letter. And if you need to go back, I went back to some of the videos 5 or 6 times to complete the spreadsheets. I don't think I'd have been able to do it without having that guidance initially. My second piece of advice is when I got the results for my first submission and it was a fail, I had to take a moment, sit down with myself and think, well, this is a level 7 piece of work. So if I were at a university writing a thesis, it would be taking me, a year or 2 to go through this. And I've written this piece in 10 weeks. This isn't really, I haven't failed yet. I've still got 2 more attempts. And what I've got here is feedback from the examiner, who is, a mysterious distant tutor. And I just need to go back through this feedback with my coursework and go through and put it through a second attempt. So I think for me, the mindset of thinking I haven't failed, this is just my first piece of feedback, really helped mentally with that process. And then my third thing is just ask colleagues, relatives, friends, anyone that will sit down and spend 3 hours of their time reading a 60-page report, to sit down and go through it. And colleagues are great because obviously they know the industry, they know the advice that you're trying to give. But also I think having non-industry friends and family read it as well can just really help with the language that is being used in the report and making sure that it's all clear.
3 excellent tips there, Kelly. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's an absolute pleasure to interview you, and congratulations on becoming a CFP once again.
Thank you very much.
It's really interesting, isn't it, to listen to different people who have different experiences of gaining their certified financial planner certification, or maybe developing the financial planning profession at large. If you know anybody who you think might be interested in listening to any of these podcasts, then please do pass on our details. That's it for me. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. See you again soon. Bye for now.